Hey Matt,
Hey, Justin, how are you?
good to see you, bud. Happy New Year.
Yeah, likewise. Happy New Year. How was your Christmas break?
That's a little on the short side, but it was relaxing and I felt a little more energized when I got back. So mission accomplished.
Good. Yeah, that's the main thing.
Yeah, how about yours?
Yeah, it was nice actually, thanks. Yeah, probably a good 10 days without opening work laptops, which was great.
Fantastic.
I seem to have a New Year bug now though, so I'm just kind of fending off germs from a cold, but it's the way of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, my little one's been sick also, so
Ah, that sucks.
that's, public school. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, quite.
Where is everybody?
Yeah, it's kind of quiet, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm gonna rattle some cages.
Hello,
Hey,
a few folks
so
joining late.
did anyone
There
get
they are.
an agenda by chance? I know, Justin, you shared an item, but let's see if we had an actual agenda page created.
Yeah, I created an agenda page.
Sweet. I'm going to share it in chat. I'm going to add some items here. Probably want to talk about Prague really quick, just for the
Mm.
rec. Um, Hopefully, well, I hope Dano would join. Is he on Discord by chance? Um, Okay, sorry, I'm editing the agenda really quick. I'm going to share my screen. Looks like we've lost Matt Whitehead. So now it's just us shouting at each other. That's too bad. Um,
I assume it's temporary.
yeah, that's my hope. So Prague planning, anything else anyone else wants to discuss? We have GitHub Actions, Prague planning. Maybe the default stuff. We can just talk about it quickly, especially if Matt Whitehead comes back. And then maybe the roadmap that the public network roadmap that I created as well. Yes, in the performance article.
Yeah, we can discuss it very quickly, just to be sure that all the contributors are aware of the article and take a look if they want.
Okay. I don't know if we're gonna get Matt Whitehead back. Justin, do you want to start shouting into the void?
Uh, sure. Sure. Do you want to do the disclaimer and whatnot?
Yes, this meeting is being recorded. There is also a friendly reminder that the Hyperledger terms of engagement and I don't remember the exact name of the policy, but it's on the wiki. Go check it out. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, so I want to talk to everybody about GitHub Actions. I've been doing a lot of development over the past month and a half or so. Coming up with a way to replace our Circle CI based CI CD pipeline with GitHub Actions. You can follow along for the gory details in Discord. I've been posting regularly with updates to the wiki as well as updates to an outstanding PR that has the implementation on it. I have gotten feedback from a couple of people. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, Sally. But I would love to hear more. There's nothing that I've heard back so far that would preclude us from moving forward with it. So I think we should be aggressive and aim for the 24.1.2 release to be delivered via GitHub Actions. We can always fail back to using Circle CI. There's nothing that's going to stop us from having a bit of redundancy. So questions, comments, concerns? Gary, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I second the notion that we be aggressive and go with it. I think that we need to start exercising this before we need to rely on it for 24.1.2. I would advocate for merging it in sooner rather than later, and just let's exercise it and make sure that it works as intended with the snapshot releases and so forth, rather than kind of discovering on the day we do the release that it's not ready.
That's an interesting idea. I don't see any reason we couldn't do that. I have already exercised it in my fork. I've deployed the output from it to our own infrastructure in a consensus. And so far things are going well. But yeah, that's a great idea. Hey, Matt, welcome back. Just to reiterate, we're talking about GitHub Actions and using them for CI/CD. So I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at the design document in the wiki that's been updated or the PR that's been posted. But I think that we're pretty much ready to go to production with it. I would like to do the 24.1.2 release with it. And Gary suggests that the sooner we merge it to main, the sooner we can start using it and experimenting it for, intermittent snapshot builds and things like that.
Yeah, sorry, Justin, my internet totally dropped on me for 5 minutes. I haven't had a chance to look at the design doc, but I'll try and do that in the next day or so. And yeah, I'm all in favor of migrating over to GitHub Actions when we think it's working as designed. We use it exclusively internally, so it's something I'm fairly kind of familiar with.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Looking forward to the feedback on. Any other questions, comments, concerns, refutations?
Just a quick question. Do we think that this is going to increase the visibility, keep it the same, or decrease the transparency of the build process and the artifacts by going to GitHub Actions versus Circle CI?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. What would you imagine would be a way that it would be more transparent? Because I think Circle CI is mostly public. Like you can get a limited view if you're not logged in, right? You can't initiate builds or anything like that. But I think if somebody were just browsing through our repositories and we're looking at a pull request and they saw the link to Circle CI, they could click on it and they could see, some of the output from it. So I guess, what do you have in mind?
Like as a goal, are we going to keep that as transparent as Circle CI? Like Circle CI right now is reasonably transparent. Like you said, that you can go in and see what the outputs are and any error logs and so forth. We can't, individual people, non-maintainers are not able to re-trigger or make modifications to the pipeline or so forth. But I mean, goal-wise, are we aiming for the same functionality where only maintainers have the ability to like resubmit jobs, but everybody can view the jobs themselves?
Yes. That's all still being preserved. Only maintainers can trigger actions. If somebody submits a PR, that would trigger actions, and they're not a maintainer, they need to get an approval from a maintainer, et cetera, et cetera. So for instance, the pre-review workflow that runs before any approvals happen, I don't think that's going to work for a non-maintainer submission. Someone's going to have to actually approve that before it goes off.
Mm-hmm. And then last point would be, like I said, I'm kind of advocating for YOLOing and going with it, but in the context of YOLOing, it would be nice to have just a PR ready to revert back to Circle CI at any time, so that we can, if we discover a problem, we can just immediately, at the click of a button, flip it back to Circle CI.
Okay. I'll look into that. I don't even know that would be necessary because these are not mutually exclusive. They can actually still be running in parallel at the same time, because once we add the artifact output, the Docker output, if we put that in GitHub packages instead of Docker Hub, now everything is stored in a different place.
The current release doesn't do packages yet, though, right?
Yes, that's correct. I don't think that would be very difficult to add. It would literally just be changing a Docker login step to point to the GitHub container registry instead of docker.io.
Yeah, so one thing I had found personally with GitHub, with Circle, I don't know if this was just a config issue for my username, but I still can't resubmit failed jobs. And it's probably just a config issue or something, but I'm guessing any maintainer can, if one of the job fails, any maintainer can rerun that failed task.
That is correct. I'll touch base with Rye to see if there's a disconnect between GitHub permissions and Circle CI permissions.
Yeah, I'm guessing moving to GitHub Actions, it'll probably be. Yeah, I don't know how it's picking up who's in the maintain list. Is that in a is that from the what's it, the code? Is that from a code owners file in the GitHub repo?
No, that would actually be organizational permissions that are set by Hyperledger. So organization, they set which repositories can be, maintained or adminned by which specific GitHub users.
Okay, that might be, I guess, where my user account doesn't have the ability to rerun Circle jobs now, I guess, possibly.
I tell you what, I'll take that as a note to make sure it works on GitHub Actions. Not sure it's worth fixing for Circle CI if we're gonna be aggressive.
No,
with this.
exactly. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. It might just come out in the wash with the move to GitHub Actions anyway, and then it's a no op. But I guess it's worth checking that for, I guess, for non-consensus maintainers is the kind of a small list of people who might hit that issue.
Okay. I'll set up a test to confirm that. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want me to try anything as my user, just let me know.
Will do.
What would you like me to capture for these notes, Justin?
Um,
We're gonna do
know.
something. That part I heard.
We're going to test that maintainers can rerun jobs.
So we also got acceptance on broad strokes.
Yeah, so
Targeting.
that would be ready for a 24.1.2 release to run with GHA and get it merged in ASAP so we can start using snapshot builds between now and then. And also confirm that Circle CI continues to run and is redundant with GitHub Actions.
For how long?
Okay. What do you mean? How long do we want to run them in redundant?
Hello, yeah.
Well, it depends on the results, but hopefully only once.
Yep.
So the plan is then we do the redundant, the parallel CI pipelines for a build or two and ensure that it works and then disable Circle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else on this one?
YOLO.
Yeah, let's just do it. Okay. I want to give potentially Dano a chance to join at the top of the hour. So let's go to the defaults next. So yeah, the consensus team is working on shipping these for 24.1.1 with a very kind of robust changelog. So Matt, Whitehead, this is primarily for you. We haven't really chatted much since we finalized that previous page. So for the first cut of the release, what we're going to be putting out is basically everything that's in this epic. Choose.
Did you mean 2440? Because you said 2411, which is already baking.
I meant probably 2412. Excuse me.
Okay.
I mean, we could try the quarterly. I don't really want to wait that long to push it out because we have momentum with people testing Besu right now. And it's really, the code itself is relatively straightforward and shouldn't cause much headaches if people actually read the change logs. But in essence, what we're shipping for this first iteration is new defaults for the like just running Besu with 0 config, and then we're shipping the configuration profiles, including the enterprise profile. So this is probably the one that we need to take a look at for the purposes of this call. But yeah, these are the, let's just do this. Profile. Yep, so we're creating a staker profile, a selfish staker profile, which the name is up for debate. The private network enterprise profile, and that's about it. So this is the one in specific that'll have fast sync for the time being as default. So we're basically replacing the original default for now. We cannot really move this into Snap until we have the full testing feature parity of Bonsai on QBFT. So this is a kind of a dependency here. We've done the aliasing of the min peer stuff, so this should be completed. This remote connections limit enabled false mat, that was one of the ones that you had suggested, and then transaction pool is sequential with no local priority and setting a reasonable default for the non-SCAP allowance.
Yeah, that all looks really good. We effectively do something similar manually to set suitable defaults for a given version of Besu based on any changes or parameter name changes and so on. One thing I need to go and look at this offline of this call, but in terms of mechanics, what does a profile look like? Is it I was going to say, is it a TOML file that
Yes.
is used by default if it exists in the right path?
So this is the flag, right?
Okay.
You Besu profile equals enterprise, and then what we do is provide a config file that just has defaults.
Yeah.
But the acceptance criteria for the like the overall profile thing is that if you specify any of these options in the actual config, they will automatically be overridden.
Awesome. So they can be overridden in another config file, I guess, and or in CLI args.
Yeah, so the way that it works in general is, you have a profile that is just a TOML file that's parsed basically independently of anything the user does. And if the user provides its own config, any configuration that will be there will override anything here.
Cool. All right. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. So
I'm gonna drop the link here if you want to review as well. I just added that we need to.
Yeah, sure. I was going to say, is in terms of the enterprise one, do you need input from me particularly on anything other than, I guess, maybe the values that we've been using for some of them, like the account percentage ones? Are you looking for any other input from me, like coding wise or anything in this area?
No, so what I want your input on is the config, right? Because
Right,
this will
sure.
impact our customers the most.
Yeah.
And
Okay, that's
to
fine.
be quite honest, I don't necessarily care what's in here. I basically said use all of your suggestions. So if you have any other things that you want included or anything else that you think should be here, just go ahead and provide review on that. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, that's a PR that's open at the moment. Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna go and do you mind tagging
I
me on
dumped
that?
it in the Zoom chat.
Awesome, thank you. And the actual profile, so the non-enterprise private ones, have the profiles for the other two gone in already?
No, so they're all being being worked on or
They're all going
merging.
together.
Yeah, so the first thing was to create the actual like
Mechanic.
profiles options themselves. And if you're
Yep.
curious, you can read the configure, like you can read the acceptance criteria that I added in 6323. Like
Yeah,
I
right.
mentioned, the flag when set overrides the defaults. But any configuration options explicitly set in the configure command line should override any of the defaults set via the profile.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, sorry, I missed looking at this offline of the call. So yeah, that's useful. I'll take a close look and I'll look at that PR now.
Sweet. Yeah, so 6323 and 6448, there's a bunch of stuff. But that's about it. So Kareem made a point the other day that the name for the selfish staker may not want to be selfish. I think that the intention of this was to show that we're using, again, checkpoint sync, and we're lowering the max number of peers. So we want to think of another name here. Some that were provided were minimalist or soloist.
Yeah, I don't have a good name, but just thinking that selfish is maybe limit to have this kind of name.
I like minimum staking profile.
Yeah, the goal was to have a little bit of shame, but still let people do what they want to do because it's open source software. I mean, they can always go set the config themselves.
I was also thinking about something like that. I will share on the chat, but yeah.
Lean mode. Yeah, I like that too. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm willing to work with anything here. I don't need to be prescriptive.
In terms of future proofing this term, if we don't want to have a lot of parameter or profile change, I think minimum staking profile might work better, because if we get E4444 as part of one of the feature or future forks, then I think that essentially is the minimum staking profile. We'd only keep 1 year worth of chain history. That's even more selfish than selfish staker. So a more future proof version of this profile name would be minimum.
Yeah, but what I wanted Kareem, yeah, this will be flat DB primarily because alongside this, all these features, every new node synced using Bonsai will have flat DB enabled by default. So I don't need to explicitly call it out here because the option is going to actually go away.
And do we want to have another profile just to test experimental feature? So for example, if you are running with
Beta profile, kind of.
Yeah, something like that. You will have all of the new stuff or something like that.
As long as we're willing to maintain it, I can get behind it.
That's a great idea.
So we have
Regarding the flat DB default, Kareem, we were discussing yesterday, is there any reason that we would have to want to enable Besu to run in partial mode, or is that just like a vestige of not having the fully flattened DB?
I think it's yeah, it's I think this mod should be deprecated.
Okay, so we just get rid
I
of that
don't see
option
any-
entirely.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't see any need to.
Can
An
you
HK
put that on
will
the-
be. Sorry.
Go ahead.
The HK will be the people that are not syncing with this flag with have the partial mode automatically, but they need to have a way to switch to the full mode. Because if we remove partial and full mode, all of the people will think that they are in full mode, and in reality they are not in full mode because they didn't sync from scratch with the full mode. So
Will they lazily fill the database though over time?
it's already what we are doing with partial mode, but it will
Yeah.
never be complete because if you are never touching an account, it will never be in the flat DB. And at the end, for the vertical transition, we need to have a full flat DB. So we need to have a way to merge everything to a FlatDB for all of the people.
I think we can table this one probably, and we need to discuss that feature a little bit. Because yeah, there's some considerations scary that we should go through. Whether we prompt everybody to resync just the world state or something like similar. Okay, I think that's plenty on the defaults. Let's go back. Oops. Awesome. Amazian, do you want to go next on this performance one? I'm still going to try to give Dano a chance to come off his other call.
Yes, sure. Yeah, so lately we published this article on the Besu performance improvements since the merge. So the idea was to share some performance numbers, especially on block processing. So why on block processing? Because this is like a very important metric in Ethereum proof of stake, like regarding the financial aspect of the validators. So there are some numbers either on like solo staking machines or on the cloud, on AWS and Azure. And there are like the different optimizations we have been working on. So Dano helped on the general EVM improvement section. And there are like other improvements. So yeah, feel free to take a look to the article, and if you have any questions, please reach out or to Danu on the general EVM optimizations. Yeah, that's it on this part.
Awesome. Okay. All right, we will maybe go to the roadmap next. Right. So I have compiled another roadmap on what the consensus team will be working on, primarily in the Besu main code base for 2024. I will be adding this to the Hyperledger wiki in short order, probably today, now that I've mentioned it on the call. So this is meant to be a public roadmap. This is not, I can change this later, but this is what we will be working on again from the consensus team. Nothing should be too big of a surprise. Maybe Matt Whitehead to note that I think next quarter is when we should try to get serious about finishing the public-private network feature parity work so that we can really start to clean up the code base in second half. So that's when my team wants to put some work into it. Primarily being the reason is that we are working, again, we're working on the bonsai friendly archive mode in this quarter. So we'll have that ready to provide a solution that's non-forest and snap compliant with private networks. So that'll be the goal there.
That sounds great. Yeah, that sounds really good. I think it's something that comes up occasionally when you're talking to enterprise users, that I think there's just an expectation that the public-private thing is purely about, are you proof of stake or a QBFT, and everything else then on is kind of common. So the more the closer parity there, the better. I've been spending time recently on the QBFT Shanghai side of that recently, partly for that reason. But yeah, certainly Snap is the biggest one I think people are reporting as you know, the docs say it's the recommended approach, and yet you can't use it, you know, with kubeft. That, you know, that's probably the biggest one we keep hearing.
Okay. I'm just gonna note this for later. I'm not actually gonna change it. Gary, you came off mute.
Other than testing, is there any reason that we would think that kubeft has specific challenges with Snap? Like the consensus mechanism itself, is there something about it that might not lend itself to doing Snap sync once the Besu Snap server implementation is merged?
So personally, I don't think I know Snap well enough to comment on whether or not kubeft has a fundamental kind of disconnect from it. I don't know if others know it better.
Okay, yeah, I think that, you know, the state is the state. I think that I just suspect that it should work, but yeah, we can definitely test that as part of the Snap server implementation work.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I don't know if kubeft gets tested as much with you know, for example, I don't know if there are fast sync kubeft tests in the code base currently. Certainly if kubeft and you know, kubeft snap sync test could be added, that would be amazing as part of that.
Kareem, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the primary difference between kubeft and a mainnet sync process would mostly be in the block headers and bodies and so forth, rather than in the sync. It's than the state sync.
Maybe, I'm not sure. Not sure if you have something else. But regarding the state, normally it's the same. So.
I think one other thing that came to mind recently on public permissioned feature parity was the new layered transaction pool is now the default, which I think means that for a typical Besu per release soak test, which is I think it still is a like a mainnet syncing test for a few days. My assumption is that from now on the sequence pool isn't going to really get exercised as part of a per release soak test. And I've been looking at what we can do in terms of per release kubeft testing, for example, which is a kind of a background thought process for me. But I guess I'm raising it in case anyone thinks there is some exercising of the sequenced pool as part of a release test, or if not, has any thoughts about how that might be incorporated into a release. Obviously, for a public sync test, it makes sense to be using the layer pool. It's just something that kind of came to mind recently, that with two kind of, I guess, two actively supported transaction pools, only one's really getting per release kind of soak testing.
And this is bringing up another need that we've talked about before, is a long-lived, like substantial state kubeft network.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think that's stuff that we talked about in the past, and I've been slowly chipping away at a little bit in terms of what a third party like our organization Kaleido could easily do on a per release basis, so that we can kind of highlight if we see a regression that hasn't been spotted in the mainnet testing and so on. So maybe it's an area, Matt, for you and I to sync up on at some point in terms of thoughts I've been having there, or maybe it's something for me to bring to the next contributor call for discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we need a lot of testing with, if we want to like, if this is a Q2 priority, we should come into Q2 with like a testing plan. Because there's like, you know, we have kind of testing gaps as far as bonsai and all these things, sync and all of these things. And then we don't have access to a large network of state with complicated state using kubeft. So we should try to come up with a plan on what that looks like. Maybe even like we can mirror traffic from mainnet or something similar and just like deploy. I'm trying to think of how we could do it, but there's
Yeah, it is a bit tricky. One thing that came to mind, which is kind of tangentially related to the GitHub Actions, is that we have some tests that runs GitHub Actions on a schedule rather than on a given action, like a PR being raised or merged. Now that's kind of orthogonal to the machine time or the expense of running stuff. But certainly we use scheduled GitHub Actions for some of those tests, which we think to us would be too costly to run on every PR in terms of time or financial cost. But give us a way of at least something running in the background that would help us spot a regression within the order of some days or of a regression being introduced. And certainly it's I guess in some respects it's a little easier to build up a QBFT chain from scratch, and sort of drive transaction traffic at smart contracts in a way that's going to at least, I guess, going back to the other point, is going to exercise the transaction pool when it's switched to sequenced, and is going to spot obvious regressions.
Okay. Yeah, we probably need to create some kind of representative state that we can repeatedly use, and then update it every hard fork, which kind of sucks, but
so one thing I've been looking at, just last comment, I guess, on the subject is an acceptance test, which could be run selectively and does more kind of soak-like testing, and therefore runs longer than any of the current acceptance tests, and is on a Gradle task, is filtered out of the current Gradle tasks, and is available to run as a Gradle task, which would be longer lived and would potentially drive more traffic at a chain by initially deploying smart contracts and setting up some initial state and stuff. So not so much restoring from existing state, but maybe a long-lived enough test that you're going to mine a fairly good number of blocks, and you're going to get a fairly good number of transactions through, and you're going to check that your nodes stay in sync through that process, and that could evolve for stopping nodes and restarting them with different sync modes like snap when that becomes available. So that's kind of been my approach and my thinking for now, having an acceptance test that isn't run all the time like the current ones, but is available. And then that maybe is something to discuss on a future call as a specific item to see what people think about that.
Yeah, I think we might need a specific follow-up call for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'll schedule that. Okay. Cool. Anything else on the roadmap? Or I think we've now got Dan on the phone. We should use a little bit of the remaining time on prog planning. Anything left on the roadmap? To reiterate, the roadmap that I shared from the consensus engineers on what we are looking at for public networks and feature parity, etc. Cool. All right, let's move along here. I'm going to save this and open up the prog planning document next to this. Here we go. Okay. Let me get back into the edit on this page real quick. So prog planning. We have another core devs call on Thursday of this week for the CL. I have a feeling the CL call will be likely used to determine the direction of the bigger fork, primarily because we want to see what scope the consensus layer is looking to ship in the next upgrade. And if it was mentioned that if there's substantial scope, we likely will press on even harder for the smaller feature fork of feature complete items now, followed by the Verkle fork. So that could mean many things. It could mean a CL driven fork, or it could mean something like an EOF driven fork. Regardless of what may be, we wanted to look at this in context of the contributors again and open for discussion in case we are asked to opine on the call. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 EOF EIPs. This might even be out of date. We can obviously get that updated, but EOF related EIPs anticipated at an XL t-shirt size, and then we have Verkle at this is probably a triple XL, frankly. But yeah, this is the kind of thought process here. It seems like the way that the actual fork is trending, we're going to be looking at 2537 is just a given. Some combination of 3074, and I'm missing that other one that was mentioned the other day, 50. I don't remember what it was called, but there's some combination of 3074, one other EIP, and 7377 to focus on wallet experience. And then we have some other really easy precompiles. And then the question is between there's some combination of 6110 and 702, 7002 for deposit flow upgrades. And then I doubt we actually see 6913, but there's some discussion around that. Inclusion lists as well. I think we should discuss inclusion lists today. I think that'll be another one that comes up on the next call. And then the rest are CL driven. So there is the effective balance upgrade, which we don't really need to discuss at length. The committee index stuff, which we also don't need to discuss too much. EIP 4.4s, before I open the floor real quick to everybody, I think that the consensus team will be working on some kind of proof of concepts within the next few quarters. If you look at the little roadmap again, well, I only have it as sometime in 24, but either way, we're looking at seeing how we can advance this EIP. Since it's mostly an optional, it's not a core, it wouldn't fall under core EIPs because it's essentially an optional spec for clients to drop history over a year. So we might be working on some proofs of concept with the portal network for that, just to push it regardless of the fork status. Okay. That was a lot. I think our real discussion is going to be around fork drivers, fork timing, and then the grab bag EIPs are kind of what they are. So I can go quiet here. Or we can discuss Verkle versus EOF is probably what we need to discuss.
So since EOF is at the top of the list, I'll go ahead and take that. Those EIP lists are out of date. We have a call every other week. It's tomorrow. It's an excuse I need to get out of some Hedera calls. But we're probably going to close. My push is going to be to close the door on any more spec changes. And we probably could have closed the door, months ago. But, as long as we're waiting for space to open up, we haven't, sealed it shut. Those numbers are still going to be valid. We just need to update them. But it's probably been in a shippable state, a sealable state, probably July, August of last year. So what I've done for the past week is I brought what we do have for the Mega EOF branch that I am maintaining on my side. To be up to date, I just need create 3, create 4, and I think there's a new exchange operation we need to implement and return contract data. But the big hurdles are done. The biggest issue with EOF is writing the container parsing and the container validation code. And the opcodes that fall out from that are comparatively simple because it's doing the same things with slightly different semantics in some cases. And once you get the validation written, and that's where the real power and value of EOF comes in from, is the container format. Tests. There are some tests in our roadmap regarding a test net. So there are some reference tests that are somewhat out of date. Again, because the spec hasn't frozen hard, which is where we need to put it. We need to get it there. But those tests can be rerun. They need to be updated because some opcode numbers are moving around out of necessity. But once we get those, there's a set of reference tests that we were working on. Because an important piece of history on this is we were going to ship this in Shanghai. We were going down the path of getting finalized reference tests. We had fuzzing going on. We had validation fuzzing. We have a new test format to prove validation. So a lot of the framework, a lot of the work that needs to be done on testing is already there. The test net, I don't think is quite as interesting as, say, a shadow fork for like one of the consensus changes, because you really need to introduce EOF specific classes and exercise those EOF specific things. So the status on the test net is that'll honestly lag initial implementations from Viper and Solidity. We need it, and in order for Viper and Solidity to commit to that, we need to freeze the spec, and they need to get signal that it indeed is actually going to ship in a hard fork. Solidity's told us that. So that's why we need to get the spec frozen and shipped out. As far as engineering work, it's mostly done. It's not completely done. There's going to be corner cases as we find tests. There's going to be different interpretations of the spec that we're going to come to consensus on by testing it. But the hard work is mostly done, and it's just getting the last opcodes done. There's one thing that might escape EVM. There's a need for a new transaction format for external create. But that shouldn't be terribly difficult. So that's what's going on with the OF.
Gotcha. Maybe I think for the purpose of this call would be useful to debate the same little debate that we had on core devs of like, what are the pros and cons of shipping EOF before Verkle and vice versa. So shipping Verkle before EOF, primarily because I think we're going to be asked to opine on this again, even though we sort of did last time. But I also want to enumerate these just because I don't know if we have them anywhere. Because
it's possible to ship. The first one is it's possible to ship EOF this year, and I don't think it's possible to ship Verkle this year.
Okay, let's do EOF first, Verkle second, pros and cons. So pros is that it's ready to ship this year, most likely. We'll just say yes. Verkle is not.
It's also a necessary step to safely increasing code limit sizes. There's a lot of push on Twitter for that. Legacy EOF cannot be safely uncapped. And any increases, we're just increasing our technical debt. EOF can be safely uncapped because of issues around some of the validation stuff that I'm not going to go into right now because it's not ready to be fully released.
Hey, quick question about the increasing the code size limit. Does that impact the Verkle design to have the code size increase, or is that compatible with Verkle's code storage strategy as it is?
So that's something Verkle's looking at changing based on what they're seeing out of EOF, actually. Their current strategy is to break things into 31 byte chunks. And because of legacy EOF, include as the first byte what the overhang is from the jump test validation. What they're looking at doing is they're looking at creating a separate jump test table that they store somewhere else in it and just doing 32 byte chunks. Uncapping storage is fully compatible with the way Verkle's doing it because you just have to split it up into 32 byte chunks and store them in sequence. So it's even if they do stick with the existing 31 byte and we would just pass in zero overhang on all of those, that's also possible as well. So EOF storage and Verkle really don't interact too much unless you're trying to overfit to legacy EVM with that immediate data overhang. And that's part of the problem. The jump test is really what's causing all the problems in the EVM stuff, is because you can't jump test into an immediate, and we don't have any container data to give any information about that or any prior validation rules.
Would you characterize the current 31 byte implementation as overfitting to the legacy EVM?
Yes, I would. But it's necessary for them to get their feature of chunked code execution. They want to be able to take just chunks of the code and execute off of that. And in order to make sure you're not, because it's valid to have a contract that will jump into immediate data and fault out. And if it's possible, someone's going to write code that requires it and break clients. So they have to make sure that works. So by putting in the first byte to say how many bytes of the current chunk are immediate data from the previous chunk, they solve that problem. Another alternative that is being discussed is to create a separate jump test table, whether it's a Boolean field or a list of numbers. That would be somewhere else. And, I don't know if they count from negative or if they have some different index for it, but that's something that they were discussing per Howell from the Epsilon team.
if we went Verkle and then EOF, presumably we'd have to come back either as a part of EOF or as a follow. You know, that would have to be part of EOF to address that overfit issue, right?
No, we just live with it because legacy and EOF are going to have to live together. We can't cancel the old contracts. So it's been a part of the EOF design is that legacy and EOF are always going to coexist for the foreseeable future. Until we can do drastic dream things like spin off the legacy chain into its own shard and deprecate it and have people validate different shards. Once we do dream stuff like that that's never materialized, legacy and EOF are going to have to be compatible.
What do you think about what said Guillaume that more we will wait to ship Verkel, more the transition will be long, and so more the state will be bigger?
I mean, honestly, the longer we wait to ship EOF, the more likely it's never going to happen, and we're going to be stuck with a crappy system that is bad for ZK, that is bad for uncapping, it has all sorts of technical debt. The technical debt argument can be made on both sides.
So Matt Whitehead has a question here. I'll just pass to you.
Yeah, thanks. I just kind of it felt like a good example of the private public parity area, just to see if this fork is being planned for QBFT chains as well, or at least testing for it. But one thing we spotted with any opcode changes is that even if a user is happy to run on an old fork, like for example, like London, when Shanghai came along, the Web3 tooling was keeping pace with new opcodes much, obviously, much more quickly than the user necessarily cared about on their blockchain. And so they were finding that things like Open Zeppelin were producing code you couldn't run on a London EVM, even though the user didn't really care about either of any of the new opcodes. It's just they did care about being on a current, for example, a current version of Open Zeppelin. So I guess once some of that tooling moves up to using this new format, it's going to start producing opcode that bytecode that's going to need permission chain to also be running at that fork. Is that correct assertion?
So what happened there was Solidity changed the default in a non-major version. If you just set your compiler to not use Shanghai opcodes, all the Solidity would compile down just fine. And if you upgraded your version of Solidity, under the covers, they started defaulting you to Shanghai, which was, a bad implementation. Should have done it on a major version rather than on a minor version. But categorically speaking, this is going to be a problem, the same problem that that layer 2s have already experienced with push 0. It's just the same situation with the same set of solutions. For QBFT, we just need to make sure that there is a configuration like for Shanghai where we can turn it on for QBFT chains and get it there. All the work done in EOF is completely transparent to the consensus mechanism. We just need to make sure that the EVM features get turned on in an appropriate fork. Verkle is a bit more involved. Probably would need a Boolean flag to say I want Verkle, I don't want Verkle, rather than having the fork define it for QBFT. But that's a bit more of the complication. That's like selecting, and it's more than the forest bonsai shift. It's like for the entire chain. Once you go over to Verkle, everyone has to go to Verkle versus you could have your mode do bonsai and someone else could do forest and nobody cares.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Understood about the versioning and stuff. Yeah. And I think, if as long as there's a plan to kind of test QBFT with the new fork when it arrives, then I think that's all that it would cover. I think, so some of the issues implementing Shanghai with QBFT is that QBFT had never had any timestamp based forks before. So doing that work for Shanghai has kind of added that. And I guess as long as we're testing that if you add the new fork to QBFT chain, you get the new fork's EVM, then I think that's great.
Yeah, we'd also need to be aware of things that touch consensus, like the beacon root that's coming in Cancun. We need to make sure that that behaves nicely with QBFT because they don't have beacon root. And it depends on some of these other features bringing in. We need to make sure that we have similar turn-off capabilities for some of those other EIPs that are being listed that bring in more CL information into the EL.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll just keep beating the drum about QBFT on the calls and things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of a wait and see. So Dana, we had Kareem posed a question in the chat. What's the status regarding tests and testnet roadmap for EOF, like at large, not necessarily for Besu?
At large, we need to have
Yeah,
a
like-
spec finished and frozen before we can really finish the test. There are some test nets that are written. A test net is not as exciting for an EVM change because you can test everything efficiently with fuzzing and local testing. But what would be useful is once we have the compilers compiling to EOF, is we take all the Solidity code of all the big contracts and create a custom test net where we compile those and produce those. We can't do that until we have compiler support.
Do you think this EOF will be ready at the end of the year or more at the middle of the year regarding the
Q3 is what I'm targeting.
Okay.
And that's Q3 for testnet rollout and wherever mainnet rollout shakes out from that.
When you say testnet, we're talking, you think Gurley, or not Gurley, like, you know, Sepolia fork Q3.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Okay.
in Q3 we would start the testnet march. That's where I'm thinking we could reach if we focus.
All right. Could you elaborate a little bit on this point that EOF is good for ZK?
Dynamic jumps. The whole bit about how we have to do jump test analysis and how jumped targets come off the stack is problematic for ZK. There are, if you use well-formed solidity, you can make assumptions and turn most dynamic jumps into static jumps. But in EOF, you only have static jumps. And that also allows for more fancy stuff, like you can do stack register reallocation more reliably in EOF than you can in well-formed solidity. Because there's also stack height validation requirements that solidity doesn't enforce. All of these things, we can make it easily transpilable. An easy thing would be with this is we could, cross compile it into Cairo. More advanced things might take EOF and go directly into their systems. We could have EOF go into LLVM if somebody's got the knowledge for that, and cross compile it to WASM and all that other stuff. Legacy EVM as it exists is really poorly suited for such cross compilation setups because of stuff like dynamic jumps and no code and data separation and the ability to fully introspect and create code on the fly. So also no code introspection is a big one to point out.
With legacy, sorry. Or in EOF, there is, I remember we had this debate like almost a year ago at this point. Sorry, no code introspection for EOF or code introspection.
You can't introspect your own code. So that would be no code introspection for EOF.
Yep, that's
in
what I
EOF.
thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool, thank you. I don't know what I'm gonna do here. I need a bullet point here. Any other pros we want to calculate on this? We're actually at time, but I don't know if folks have other meetings to discuss. Maybe really quickly, we go down the pros of Verkle first versus EOF second, and then we can kind of fill in the cons. I think we just want to be able to articulate these well on the call. The pros is shorter migration, less state to migrate. What was the point that was made on the call about Kareem? I know that you and I discussed this with shipping EOF first unlocks something in Verkle. I'm trying to remember what we were discussing yesterday. And Guillaume said he was going to come back and confirm that.
Is that not the code uncap? Code size uncapping?
Maybe it was the code size uncapping. Yeah.
Code size uncapping, I think, is the biggest thing, the biggest short-term benefit we get from it.
Okay, so shorter migration, less state to migrate. Kareem, what do you view as the reasons we would want to ship Verkle first here? Less complexity of the EVM.
Yeah, on my opinion, it's more the migration, I think it's really risky to implement Verkel, and we are adding more complexity if we add something else.
I would almost put that.
Really-
Yeah, I would almost put that in the cons category, is like having more time to work on Verkle is like Verkle first is a con would be that we have to get all of that done up front. On the pro side, Verkle first, I would say that there seems to be broad consensus around a small feature fork ahead of Verkle, and I think it's pretty fair to say, Dano, you might think differently, but I think it's reasonable to say that EOF makes the small feature fork not small anymore. So there might be some problems with the consensus around the small feature fork scope.
Yeah, EOF pretty much needs to be a headliner. That's because there's so much technical debt that we have to go sweep up in one go.
I feel that EOF we have a lot of modification in the EVM part, so maybe really risky regarding consensus issue. I don't know if people want to have a long period of test, or is it okay to say, okay, we are ready this year, we will ship this year, or people maybe will be afraid to push this EAP this year, and they will want more and more tests because it's really risky.
So to that end, I do think that EOF, if it does happen, should be gated on a certain amount of time where fuzzing finds nothing. So we get all the fuzzing stuff, we get it appropriate for that. We do validation fuzzing and the opcode fuzzing. And we should require that, the fuzzer should be able to run for a week solid and not find anything. Just a week. So like 7 days minimum solid before we finding nothing. So yeah, as far as testing, that is something that I think we can quantify and characterize versus some nebulous. We have no idea what might be wrong. I think we have the tools out there to quantify the quality.
For me, it's not really Verkel or EOF first or Verkel first. It's just we will push some big EAPs one after the next one, and it's a lot of risk to have a big issue in the network. But yeah.
It's about as risky as changing our fundamental storage architecture. Probably a little less risky.
I know we're missing more pros than this.
Well, this is for Verkle first, EOF second. Verkle in general has pros, so I think it's given that it's going to happen. It's just a question of when.
Yeah, I guess you're right. We'll just say Verkle functionality improvements is just like the stuff, getting the stuff faster.
Light client, it's not really related to Verkel first.
Yeah, but I think again, to Dano's point, that the order doesn't really matter for that.
Yeah,
And it's not light clients, it's stateless clients. Those are entirely different things and fundamentally better for a stateless client.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I want to be cognizant of time here. Maybe we can I'm trying to think, let's end on the note of like how do we want to talk about this in terms of core devs? And I think, Dano, last time on the core devs call, I was just basically saying this represents like some of the maintainers. I think what we would be wanting to do is something like we created a pros and cons list. We have maintainers that are happy with either approach, and here's what we've gathered. I don't know if you had a better
Nethermind's
idea.
got a split opinion too. They've just got a CEO that can say, no, this is what we're doing. So I think that's just a fundamental, organizational difference.
Yeah.
Do we want to call out the L2 elephant in the room? Like, Linea and other ZK rollups are certainly going to have to pay a cost for ZK EVM, for EVM equivalents in an EOF world.
So the current EOF could be cross-compiled into legacy EOF, not gas equivalent. But another thing is if you're doing arithmetization of the stack trace, it's still mostly the same. You're just going to have a few more opcodes. You might need to add a validation step in a ZK to prove that it validated properly and figure out how to get a ZK statement for this code is correct. And that was what you would need for the create opcodes. But as far as the fundamental VM architecture, apart from the container format and some new opcodes, it's the same VM.
You think they could use like a layer 2 could just have a single EVM implementation that, I mean, the opcodes are going to be treated differently. So there's going to be different arithmetization for different opcodes in different forks, right? Or in different containers, I should say.
So right now the plan there's one issue with address space expansion that hasn't been settled yet. We might just have to go with different opcodes for address space expansion, but beyond that, the difference between the containers is the selection of opcodes they have available. So if you have one trace that was EOF and one trace that was legacy, you have the opcode number, you should be able to have the logic that goes there with all the information you need on just that line. So for example, like R jump, relative jump, you would just need to have the same immediate information for the next, pack that in, and you wouldn't see that in legacy. And similarly, you wouldn't see stack-based jumps in your arithmetization for a EOF call. So it's just the selection of opcodes that you would use.
Okay, yeah, I think that there's definitely a cost, like a layered cost there, but it'd be great to get you on some of the ZK EVM implementation calls. Oh no, just this, that, this.
Yeah, I mean, Gary, it's a similar thing with Verkle, is like the pro is that it provides an opportunity, but there's a cost, but the other pro is that it's not mandatory for L2 right away.
Yeah, because I think you could still claim EVM equivalence without making any statements about the state storage format.
Meta statement, we need a standard for EVM equivalence and meta statement.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think from the perspective of the call that we will just say, yeah, we will, because I don't think, frankly, that our team at Consensus has a strongly held opinion about either of these things, really. We have different team members with different thoughts. So maybe, Dano, any kind of EOF discussion will mostly punt to you, but we will, if prompted, we'll add some of these pros and cons from our perspective, if that makes sense.
Sounds good.
Just
I don't know if we can really do this, but it would be nice to have present a unified team perspective of our reasoning and our position, as opposed to being a bunch of individuals with our own opinions.
Yeah, we could try to do the ref kind of blog and say, here are the opinions of X, like we can just say XYZ maintainers and then like put the EIPs. We don't need to like do a table. My point is like if we had a champion that wants to present it, we present the champion's viewpoint, and then we have like the pros and cons, and then we go to the next EIP, right? We could do something like that, I think, Gary, before the next EL call, probably not by Thursday.
Yeah, how would we coordinate that apart from like the contributor calls?
Yeah, well, we don't need to do, I think we can do async. I can coordinate that. I can write up an outline and I can say, I have an idea on how I can do this. Maybe if you want to let me take for action, Matt, to create and outline a document for Besu team prog scope opinions. And I have an idea on how I can say, like, how we can allow room for individual dissension with having a still complete picture. I have some ideas. So let me take this. We don't need to go through it because I think will take time. And Dano, I think you said you have opinions on 3074. I think that'll be a great forum where we can post like I said, we can have the opinions of individuals and we can have a coherent strategy without having to get too prescriptive of like yes, no, hard black, white on each EIP.
I think 3074 needs a hard black white. I think as written, it is unsafe because it lacks revocation. I think we're increasing the space of unique areas where users can be damaged. We're adding to that space. And the argument that we shouldn't, put, bubble wrap everything is one argument. But on the other hand, we shouldn't be adding flamethrowers. I made a proposal where we can add revocation to it. Expiration is not sufficient for me to say I'm cool with it. We need revocation. That's my opinion on it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I kind of explored some of the weaknesses in the existing revocation suggestion with the MetaMask team, and they were a little bit agog at how unergonomic it exists today. So we might be able to continue those conversations and maybe bring them to bear on it, which I think would be pretty powerful argument.
Yeah, maybe we try to get their opinion, Justin, before the next call as well, because they're one of the biggest.
I had a conversation with Dan Finley last night.
Amazing. Let's see what we can do with that one.
I think rather than devs on the call saying this is good or bad, we need wallet devs. We need the wallet teams to say this is good or this is bad.
That's exactly
my point is we can corral those folks, Dano.
Yeah.
Try to get them to join.
MetaMask, Rainbow, Trust Wallet, Coinbase Wallet. Those are really who we need to hear from on this.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can try to get MetaMask to speak on the EL call. I will try to take that for an action as well. Consensus team to see if
I won't veto it, I won't block it, but I might refuse to implement it. You might have to do it yourselves. So that's where we're at on it.
I think we can work that out. Okay, Kareem, I saw you come off mute earlier. Do you have any last comments here?
No, it's okay.
All right. I think this is a good logical point. To reiterate, I'm going to think up a format that we can use that's similar to the ref fork scope thing, blog thing, that'll allow for some individual opinions, but also some kind of team opinions. I think I have an idea. I'll share out a first kind of cut in the contributor channel and we can start iterating. And people can literally put in their own writing if they want to have their full opinion stated there. I won't write it all. Cool. Sweet. That was actually super productive. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. So thank you for those watching on the recording. Actually, I can't stop the recording. Any last comments from the group here before we break?
– Great call. Wish they were all this substantive.
Yeah, me too. And Dano, for the first half, we discussed, if you review the notes, we're going to be using the GitHub Actions-based release process for 24.1.2 as our testbed.
Cool.
Awesome. All right, thanks everyone. I will see you all on the core devs calls or on the next contributor calls. And Matt Whitehead, can you just shoot me a Slack ping? Maybe let's discuss some follow-up steps for the QBFT feature parity stuff. We should probably create a whole work stream around how we want to get there.
Sure. Yeah, I'll drop you a line.
Awesome. All right, everyone, have a good rest of your day and good rest of your weeks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Everyone.